The summons. The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between stars, a crystalline structure large enough to house vessels from 1,000 worlds. Today it held representatives from the 73 established empires, their diverse forms creating a tapestry of galactic civilization. At the central dais stood Vorchin, the Kralix High Arbiter, his chitinous frame gleaming under bioluminescent lights. This session concerns the primitives of Sol 3, Vorchin announced, his translator device rendering his clicks into standard galactic. The species calls themselves humans. A ripple of amusement passed through the assembly. Primitives petitioning for council membership occurred perhaps once every millennium, and the outcome was always the same: rejection followed by enforced isolation until they achieved proper civilization. Zyla Cormith, ambassador from the Velkan Dominion, unfurled her sensory tendrils. Another species that discovered antimatter drives and thinks they're ready for the stars, she purred, her voice dripping with condescension. How tedious. The massive holographic display activated, showing Earth rotating peacefully. The planet appeared unremarkable: single-star system, moderate resources, nothing of strategic value. A backwater as most emerging worlds were. The humans requested mission under Article 7 of the Concordat, Vorchin continued. They've achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonies on 17 worlds, and claim to meet all technological prerequisites. Lord Thexval of the Dominax Empire, a being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field, pulsed with disdain. 17 colonies in 2 centuries? The Dominax claimed 400 systems in our first expansion decade. These creatures are sluggish even by primitive standards. Agreement echoed throughout the chamber. The Galactic Council had stood for 47,000 years, comprised of species that had endured wars, plagues, and cosmic catastrophes. Each empire represented here had earned their place through demonstrated superiority. There is another matter, Vorchin said, his mandibles clicking with what might have been uncertainty. The humans have requested that if we deny their petition, we formally acknowledge their territorial claims to their current systems. Laughter erupted. Actual, genuine laughter across dozens of species. The concept of primitives demanding anything from the council was absurd. Zyla's tendrils quivered with mirth. Acknowledge? They think we acknowledge the yapping of animals? I move we simply quarantine their space for another 1,000 years until they've matured. Seconded, boomed Krothzul, the mineral-based ambassador from the Silicon Collective. His voice resonated like grinding stone. Vorchin raised a manipulator for silence. Standard procedure requires we hear their representative before voting. He awaits outside. Let the primitives speak, Thexval pulsed. We could use entertainment before the real business begins. The chamber doors irised open with a whisper of advanced technology. Through them walked a single human. His name was Marcus Thorne, though none in the assembly bothered to learn it yet. He stood approximately 1.8 meters tall, bipedal, wearing what appeared to be a formal suit of black fabric, primitive textile, many noted with disdain. His hair was dark, graying at the temples, and his eyes were a peculiar shade of blue that seemed to absorb the chamber's light. He walked to the petitioner's platform without hesitation, his movements efficient, controlled. Around him, beings who had mastered gravity manipulation, telepathy, and dimensional folding watched with barely concealed contempt. I am Marcus Thorne, representing the United Terran Systems, he said calmly, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. I thank the council for this audience. Your petition is noted and will be rejected, Vorchin said without ceremony. Your species lacks the necessary. I didn't come to petition, Marcus interrupted. Silence crashed through the chamber like a physical force. No one interrupted the High Arbiter. Not in 47 millennia. Vorchin's mandibles spread in a threat display. You dare. I came to deliver a warning, Marcus continued, his voice never rising, never wavering. For the past 6 months, your empires have been conducting military exercises within systems we've claimed. Your vessels have violated our territorial sovereignty 17 times. Your mining operations have begun harvesting resources from asteroids we've legally registered. Zyla's tendrils coiled with anger. You speak to the council as if you have authority here, primitive. We were claiming systems when your ancestors were still living in caves. Marcus's eyes met hers directly. And yet, here I stand, and there you sit, having learned nothing from those millennia. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Beings who had never known challenge, never faced opposition from a species they considered inferior, felt something unfamiliar stirring. We're giving you one opportunity, Marcus said. Respect our borders or face consequences. Thexval's energy field crackled with rage. Consequences? From you. Marcus smiled, and there was something in that expression that none of them understood. Not yet. Yes, he said simply. From us. The arrogance of empires. The chamber erupted in chaos. 73 empires, representing thousands of worlds and trillions of beings, reacted to Marcus Thorne's statement with everything from outrage to fascination. Vorchin slammed his primary manipulator against the resonance plate, creating a sound that cut through the cacophony. You stand before the accumulated might of galactic civilization and speak of consequences? The High Arbiter's translator struggled to convey the depth of his incredulity. Your entire species couldn't defeat the security forces of a single council world. Marcus remained motionless on the petitioner's platform, hands clasped behind his back in a posture that suggested military training. You're making assumptions based on incomplete data. We know everything about your species, interjected Sylph Commander Raineth, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. Your wars, your technologies, your biological limitations. You're short-lived, fragile, bound to planets with specific atmospheric requirements. You've never faced a real threat. Haven't we? Marcus's question hung in the air. Krothzol's stone-like form ground forward slightly. You fight among yourselves with chemical propellants and fission devices. We've observed your conflicts. Crude. Wasteful. Emotional. Emotional, Marcus repeated as if tasting the word. Yes, we're emotional. Is that why you dismissed us? Because we feel fear, anger, love, hatred? Because we haven't engineered those inconvenient traits away. Xyla's tendrils undulated in what her species considered a dismissive gesture. Emotions are evolutionary baggage. The advanced species here have either transcended them or learned to suppress them entirely. They make you predictable, controllable, weak. Predictable, Marcus said softly. He reached into his jacket slowly, drawing out a small data crystal. May I present evidence to the council? Vorchin hesitated, then gestured permission. A drone floated down, retrieved the crystal, and interfaced it with the central display. The hologram shifted, showing a world none of them recognized. It was beautiful, azure oceans, emerald continents, 3 moons hanging in a lavender sky. Cities of elegant architecture spread across the landscape, their designs suggesting a civilization of profound aesthetic achievement. This is Taraxis Prime, Marcus said. Or rather, it was. Population, 4 billion. They called themselves the Soren. Artists, philosophers, pacifists. When we discovered their ruins, we spent years trying to understand what happened to them. The image changed, showing the same world transformed into a nightmare landscape. The continents were scorched black, the oceans boiled away, the cities reduced to glass plains. They were visited by a species called the Vekara, Marcus continued. The Vekara believed that resources were being wasted on beauty and contemplation. They gave the Soren an ultimatum: submit to incorporation or face extinction. The Soren, being peaceful, tried negotiation. The assembled ambassadors shifted. A few recognized the name Vekara, an extinct species from 12,000 years past. Their empire had collapsed suddenly, though records of how were fragmented. The Vekara didn't negotiate, Marcus said. They demonstrated their superiority through genocide. 4 billion lives extinguished in a single cycle. And then the Vekara moved on, confident in their dominance. Thexval pulsed impatiently. Ancient history. What relevance does this have? Marcus's expression didn't change. We found something else on Taraxis Prime. A message, preserved in quantum storage, sent into the void before the end. It was a warning about the Vekara, their methods, their weaknesses. That message drifted for 8,000 years before we intercepted it. He paused, letting the weight of that time span settle. The Soren died hoping someone would hear them. Someone did. The image shifted again, showing a different world. This one was intact but clearly abandoned, with massive structures crumbling into decay. This is Vekara Prime, Marcus said. Empty for 12 millennia. Your histories say the Vekara Empire collapsed from internal conflict. That's not quite accurate. Vorchin leaned forward, mandibles clicking rapidly, a sign of agitation. Explain. The Soren's message reached a species the Vekara hadn't encountered yet. A species that was just beginning to explore beyond their home system. A species that learned what the Vekara had done and decided that such cruelty could not be tolerated in a civilized galaxy. Impossible, Krothzol rumbled. The Vekara were a mature empire. No emerging species could have threatened them. Marcus smiled that same unsettling smile. That's what the Vekara thought. They were wrong. The hologram changed one final time, showing a monument on a verdant world. Carved in stone that had weathered millennia were symbols in dozens of languages, and at its center, translated into standard galactic, were words that made several ambassadors' biological equivalents of blood run cold. Here lies the Vekra Empire. They learned too late that mercy is not weakness, and that some species, when provoked beyond reason, will pursue justice across any distance, through any cost, until balance is restored. Below that, a single word in a script that matched human writing. Humanity. The evidence. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was absolute. 73 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations stared at the monument, at the impossible claim it represented, and struggled to process the implications. Vorchin was the first to recover. You're claiming that your primitive species destroyed the Vekra Empire 12,000 years ago? That humans existed at that level of development? His mandibles clattered with derision. Your own records show you only achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago. Our current civilization achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago, Marcus corrected. Humanity is far older than you realize. Xyla's tendrils coiled tightly, a defensive posture. Preposterous. We've surveyed Earth. We've analyzed your archaeological record. There's no evidence of advanced civilization before your industrial age. Because we made certain there wouldn't be, Marcus said quietly. Tell me, Ambassador Cormith, how thoroughly do you think a species could erase evidence of their existence if they had 12,000 years and unlimited motivation? Rainetha's crystalline form chimed with agitation. Why would any species deliberately destroy evidence of their own achievements? It violates every principle of cultural preservation. Marcus turned to face her directly. Because we learned a terrible lesson on Taraxis Prime. We learned what happens when a peaceful species broadcasts their existence to a hostile galaxy. We learned that sometimes, survival requires sacrifice. Including the sacrifice of history. He gestured to the display which shifted to show archaeological sites on Earth. We didn't erase everything. We couldn't. Pieces remain, scattered across our world, dismissed by our own modern scholars as mythology or misinterpreted natural formations. We let our descendants forget, let them rebuild from primitiveness, because we decided that Earth deserved a chance to develop without the weight of what we'd done. Thexval's energy field crackled with skepticism. And what exactly did you do? We hunted the Vekra across 400 star systems, Marcus said, his voice devoid of emotion. We pursued them for 6 generations. We learned their technology, adapted it, improved it. We infiltrated their colonies, sabotaged their infrastructure, turned their client species against them. We fought a war that most of our people died in, but we didn't stop until every Vekra military installation was ash and their empire was broken beyond repair. One species against an established empire, Krothzul said. The mathematics don't support such an outcome. Marcus nodded slowly. You're right. Logically we should have lost. The Vekra had superior technology, greater numbers, established supply lines. They should have crushed us in the first engagement. He paused. But they didn't account for one factor. Which was? Vorchin demanded. They didn't understand what they'd awakened when they exterminated the Soren. They didn't realize that some species, when confronted with absolute evil, don't calculate odds. They don't perform cost-benefit analyses. They simply refuse to stop. The display shifted again, showing data streams, weapon schematics, battle records. We cataloged everything before we erased our civilization. We left it in quantum storage, hidden in locations throughout our solar system, with instructions for our descendants to find when they were ready. 6 months ago we became ready. Xyla's voice carried a tremor her species rarely displayed. You're claiming you've recovered ancient human weapons technology? Not claiming, Marcus said. Demonstrating. Your vessels that violated our borders? We've been tracking them with sensor technology you can't detect. Your mining operations in our registered asteroids? We've cataloged every ounce of material removed. Your military exercises near our colonies? We've analyzed every tactical pattern, every ship configuration, every communication protocol. He produced another data crystal. This contains complete specifications for every vessel you've deployed near human space in the past 6 months. Shield frequencies, weapon ranges, crew complements, reactor signatures. Everything. A drone retrieved the crystal and interfaced with the council systems. The data began scrolling across subsidiary displays, and the assembled ambassadors watched their own military secrets laid bare. Impossible, breathed Raineth. Some of that information is encrypted with quantum keys that can't be broken. Can't be broken with current technology, Marcus corrected. We developed quantum cryptography 12,000 years ago. We've had considerable time to refine it. Vorchin's posture shifted from dismissive to alert. You're threatening us with surveillance? With espionage? I'm not threatening you at all, Marcus said. I'm providing evidence that when humans commit to something, we're thorough. We watched the Vekra for 3 generations before we struck our first blow. We learned patience. Thexval's field pulsed with what might have been concern. What do you want? Marcus's expression finally showed emotion, a deep, weary sadness. What we've always wanted. To be left alone. To develop our civilization without interference. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, allies, partners in exploration. Instead, we found empires that view us as primitives to be exploited or ignored. He looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as his biology allowed. We don't want war. We've seen where that leads. But we will defend what's ours. The demonstration. The Galactic Council chamber remained suspended between disbelief and dawning concern. Lord Thexval's energy form contracted and expanded in a pattern that suggested deep calculation. Your claims require extraordinary evidence. Surveillance data could be fabricated. Historical monuments can be constructed. Show us proof that you possess technology worthy of respect. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You want a demonstration? Yes, Vorchin said, recovering some of his earlier authority. The burden of proof rests with you. If you truly possess this ancient technology, prove it under controlled conditions. Very well. Marcus touched a device on his wrist. Captain Reeves, execute Protocol Damocles. From the viewing ports surrounding the council chamber, the assembled ambassadors could see the vast emptiness of space. But as they watched, something changed. The stars themselves seemed to ripple, like reflections on disturbed water. Then a ship appeared. It materialized not through conventional FTL emergence but through what appeared to be a collapse of space itself. One moment, empty void. The next, a vessel hung in the darkness, and every sensor in the council chamber screamed warnings. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way. Its hull was midnight black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and its lines suggested both elegance and predatory efficiency. It was smaller than most council dreadnoughts, perhaps only 2 kilometers long, but something about its presence made size irrelevant. Rainetha's crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated shock. That's not possible. Our sensors didn't detect any approach. No gravitational wake, no dimensional stress, no tachyon emissions. It just appeared. Quantum displacement drive, Marcus said calmly. We developed it 10,000 years ago. The Vekra never saw us coming either. Xyla's tendrils had fully retracted into her carapace, a defensive reflex. One ship doesn't prove superiority. Captain Reeves, Marcus said, target the derelict station at coordinates sent to your console. Minimal power. The human ship didn't rotate to face its target. Instead, space itself seemed to bend around it, and a beam of coherent energy lanced out toward an abandoned listening post 3 light minutes away. The beam moved faster than light itself, crossing the distance instantaneously. The listening post, which had been built by the ancient Macron civilization and had survived for 8,000 years through sheer durability, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. One moment it was there, the next it was converted to its component atoms. Zero-point energy weapon, Marcus explained. Draws power directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations. Effectively unlimited ammunition, and the beam propagates through subspace, making it impossible to intercept. Krothzul's stone form ground together in what his species expressed as distress. That violates the Treaty of Cascara. Zero-point weapons were banned after the Silicon Wars. We weren't signatories to that treaty, Marcus replied. We didn't exist as far as galactic civilization knew. But we've honored its spirit. These weapons haven't been used in 12,000 years. Until you force this demonstration. Vorchin's mandibles clicked rapidly. One vessel, however advanced, cannot threaten the Council. We command fleets of millions. Captain Reeves, Marcus said, how many ships are currently positioned around this chamber? A woman's voice, filtered through the communication system, responded with professional detachment. 47, Ambassador Thorne. All running silent protocols. The Council's sensors are detecting 0 vessels. The chamber erupted in alarm. Ambassadors demanded sensor sweeps, tactical analyses, anything to confirm or deny the claim. Every scanner came back empty. No ships. No anomalies. Nothing. Marcus waited for the chaos to subside. We've been here for 3 days. 47 ships, each crewed by volunteers who understand what's at stake. They've been watching, learning, preparing. Not because we want conflict, but because we refuse to be victims again. Thexval's energy field dimmed considerably. This is an act of war. You've brought weapons into neutral space, violated Council sanctuary. Article 19 of the Concordat allows defensive measures for species under consideration for membership, Marcus countered. And we informed your security forces of our presence when we arrived. They dismissed our notification as primitive confusion about Council protocols. He produced yet another data crystal. This contains their response. I believe the phrase used was, adorable but unnecessary. Zyla had finally extended her tendrils again, though they quivered with uncertainty. What you're describing, the planning, the coordination, the patience, it's inhuman. Yes, Marcus agreed softly. It is. That's what you made us become. The Vekara forced us to abandon everything that made us human, our art, our culture, our capacity for mercy, in pursuit of justice for the Soren. It took us 8,000 years to recover those parts of ourselves. We will not lose them again. He looked around the chamber. We came here offering friendship. We were prepared to contribute to galactic civilization, to share our discoveries, to learn from you. Instead, you treated us with contempt. You violated our sovereignty. You made us remember what we tried so hard to forget. What are we to forget? Vorchin asked quietly. Marcus's eyes reflected the cold light of distant stars. That when humans are pushed beyond mercy, we don't just fight. We endure. The Council divided. The Galactic Council chamber had transformed from a place of casual superiority to one of genuine tension. Ambassadors who had gathered expecting routine dismissal of primitive claims now faced a species that had just demonstrated technology centuries beyond their own understanding. Vorchin called for a recess. The Council will deliberate privately. Ambassador Thorne, you will wait in the antechamber. Marcus bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that somehow felt more like acknowledgement between equals than deference to authority. As he departed, the massive doors sealed behind him with a resonance that felt final. The moment he was gone, chaos erupted. We must respond with overwhelming force. Thexval's energy field crackled with agitation. This is an unprecedented violation of Council authority. If we allow one primitive species to threaten us, we invite every backwater civilization to attempt the same. With what force? Rainetha's crystalline chimes carried an edge of desperation. Did you not comprehend what we just witnessed? They have 47 vessels we cannot detect, employing technology that renders our entire defensive doctrine obsolete. An attack would be suicide. Zyla's tendrils wove complex patterns, a sign her people displayed during intense calculation. We need more information. The human claimed their civilization existed 12,000 years ago, but our archaeological surveys of Earth show no evidence. Either he's lying or they achieved erasure more complete than anything in galactic history. Krothzul's mineral composition shifted, creating grinding sounds. The monument on Vekara Prime exists. I've accessed our historical archives. The Vekara Empire did collapse approximately 12,000 years ago. Our records attributed it to civil war, but what if those records were manipulated? What if the humans erased their own involvement from galactic memory just as they erased it from their own world? A smaller ambassador, representing the Quillith hive mind, pulsed with bioluminescent communication. Her translator rendered the thoughts. This presents an existential question. If one species can hide so thoroughly, how many others might exist unknown to us? How many of our assumptions about galactic civilization are based on incomplete data? Vorchin raised a manipulator for silence. We must approach this methodically. First question. Do we believe the humans' claims about ancient civilization? Lord Dravekor of the Orion Ascendancy, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. His species were known for their analytical minds and extensive record-keeping. I've been cross-referencing timeline data. 12,000 years ago, there was a period of unusual quiet in this galactic sector. 7 established civilizations reported unexplained losses of border outposts. The Vekara Empire, which had been aggressively expanding, suddenly withdrew from all frontier territories. Within 2 centuries their empire had fragmented. The official explanation was internal political collapse, but the speed was anomalous. He projected historical data into the central display. Additionally, there are accounts from that period of a shadow fleet, vessels that appeared on long-range sensors but vanished before intercept. These reports were dismissed as sensor ghosts or pirates. But the descriptions matched the capabilities we just witnessed. Xyla's tendrils coiled thoughtfully. If we accept this as truth, we're acknowledging that a species we considered primitive has been aware of galactic civilization for 12 millennia and chose deliberate isolation. Why? The human told us why, said Ambassador Nixera of the Phantom Collective, a species of energy beings similar to Thexval but more philosophical. They witnessed genocide and responded with their own campaign of destruction. Then, horrified by what they'd become, they chose to forget. It's actually quite elegant, a civilization-wide reset to preserve their core identity. Thexval pulsed with frustration. You speak of elegance while they hold weapons to our collective heads. This is extortion. Is it? Raineth's chimes carried a sharp note. They asked only for recognition of their territorial claims and respect for their sovereignty. We could have granted that trivially. Instead we mocked them. We invaded their space. We provoked this response. Vorchin's mandibles clicked in a pattern suggesting deep contemplation. The question before us is not historical but immediate. How do we proceed? I see three options: capitulate to their demands, attempt diplomatic negotiation, or prepare for conflict. Capitulation is unthinkable, Thexval stated. The Council does not bow to threats. Conflict appears suicidal given their technological advantage, Raineth countered. Dravecore gestured to the data still floating in the display. I suggest option 4, verification. The human provided coordinates for their quantum storage sites. Send scientific teams to Earth's solar system to confirm his claims. If the technology exists as described, we negotiate from informed positions. If it's a bluff, we expose it. Xyla's tendrils wove approval. Reasonable. But who leads such a mission? This requires both scientific expertise and diplomatic sensitivity. I will go, Vorchin said, surprising everyone. As High Arbiter, it's my responsibility. I will take a small scientific vessel, unarmed, and request permission to verify the human claims. It demonstrates we're willing to trust their word enough to place myself in their power. Krothzol rumbled with what might have been respect. Bold. If they're truly as dangerous as they claim, you risk yourself. If they're bluffing, you risk your authority. Then let us discover which, Vorchin said. Summon the human back. The journey to truth. Marcus Thorne returned to the council chamber with the same measured calm he'd maintained throughout. If the past hour of deliberation had concerned him, his expression revealed nothing. Vorchin addressed him directly. The council has decided. We will send a verification team to your solar system to examine the evidence you've described. I will lead this team personally. Will your people permit such an expedition? Marcus studied the High Arbiter for a long moment. You would place yourself in our hands? That's either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both, Vorchin admitted. But if we're to move past this impasse, one side must demonstrate trust. I choose to act first. A faint smile crossed Marcus's face. Very well. I'll transmit coordinates and protocols. You may bring scientific personnel and equipment, but no weapons. Captain Reeves will escort your vessel to Earth. Unacceptable, Thexval pulsed. The High Arbiter traveling unarmed into potentially hostile territory. Is exactly what will happen, Vorchin interrupted, if we wish to resolve this peacefully. Ambassador Thorne has demonstrated they could destroy us if they wished. If this is a trap, weapons won't save me. 3 hours later, Vorchin's scientific vessel departed from the council chamber, followed by the impossible-to-detect human ship that nonetheless maintained perfect formation. The journey to Sol System would take 4 days at conventional FTL speeds. Aboard the human vessel Nightfall, Captain Sarah Reeves watched the council ship through displays that showed data her guests couldn't begin to interpret. She was a tall woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen things that would have broken lesser people. Do you think they'll actually understand? Asked Commander Jax Corvain, her executive officer. Or will they dismiss it like they dismissed everything else? Vorchin isn't stupid, Sarah replied. Arrogant, yes. Conditioned by millennia of unquestioned superiority, absolutely. But not stupid. When he sees the archives, when he understands what we sacrificed, he'll have to choose, acknowledge us as equals or commit to a war nobody wins. And if he chooses war? Sarah's expression hardened. Then we do what our ancestors did. We endure, and we make certain they never forget the cost of underestimating humanity. On the council vessel Luminous Truth, Vorchin assembled his science team. There were 12 specialists representing different disciplines: archaeology, quantum physics, xenobiology, historical analysis. Among them was Dr. Kelshaw, a Velkan researcher known for her skeptical rigor. High Arbiter, she said, her tendrils moving in patterns of concern, I must express my doubts. The claims we're investigating require rewriting fundamental assumptions about human development. The probability of successful civilization erasure approaches zero. Yet here we are, Vorchin replied, following a ship we cannot detect, to verify technology we cannot explain, because a species we dismissed demonstrated capabilities we cannot match. At what point do improbable facts override comfortable assumptions? The journey passed in tense anticipation. The human vessel maintained communication protocols but offered no additional information. It was only as they approached Sol System that Sarah Reeves contacted them directly. High Arbiter, we're approaching the first site. It's located in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We've cleared it of standard mining operations and debris. You're free to approach and conduct whatever analyses you require. The luminous truth maneuvered toward the coordinates, and what appeared on their sensors made even Vorchin's experienced composure falter. Embedded in an asteroid measuring 40 kilometers across was a structure. Not built on the surface, embedded within the rock itself as if the asteroid had formed around it. The structure was clearly artificial, composed of materials that their sensors struggled to analyze. Impossible, Dr. Kelshaw breathed. The asteroid is approximately 4.2 billion years old. Nothing artificial could survive that long, and certainly nothing could have been placed inside during formation. Unless, suggested Dr. Vorn, the quantum physicist, it wasn't placed during formation. What if it was inserted later, through some form of quantum displacement? Anchored outside normal space-time, aging differently than the surrounding material. They sent probes. The structure responded to their approach by activating, not hostile, simply acknowledging their presence. A quantum lock disengaged and a chamber opened. Inside they found a library. Data storage that used principles their best scientists couldn't fully comprehend, containing information in formats that required human translation devices to interpret. But the samples they could access told a story that made their biological equivalents of hearts sink. Histories of Earth stretching back 15,000 years. Technical schematics for technologies ranging from basic fusion to devices that manipulated fundamental forces. Cultural records of a civilization that had spanned 100 star systems. Battle logs from the war against the Vekra, each entry a testament to losses endured and prices paid. And at the center of it all, a memorial. Holographic images of 4 billion Soren faces, each name preserved, each life remembered. Below them, words in ancient human script, translated into hundreds of languages. We remember. We endured. We chose mercy over vengeance. But we will never forget what forgetting costs. Vorchin stood before the memorial, and for the first time in his long life, felt genuinely small. The new Concordat, 800 words. The journey back to the Galactic Council chamber took 4 days, but for Vorchin and his science team, each hour was spent reviewing the overwhelming evidence from Earth's solar system. They had visited 7 sites in total, each containing archives that documented a civilization far more advanced than current galactic standard, and each telling the same impossible story. Humanity had risen, fought, sacrificed, and deliberately fallen, all in pursuit of redemption for sins they could not undo. Dr. Kelshaw had stopped expressing skepticism by the 3rd site. By the 7th, she sat in quiet contemplation, her tendrils motionless in a state her species reserved for profound philosophical revelation. We teach our children that civilization is a linear progression, she said softly. That advancement inevitably leads to superiority. But the humans chose to regress. They chose to forget. And somehow that makes them more advanced than any of us. When the luminous truth docked at the council chamber, Vorchin requested an immediate full session. All 73 empires were required to attend. No exceptions. The chamber filled quickly, ambassadors arriving with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. The fact that Vorchin had returned safely was noted. The fact that he'd requested a full session rather than a standard report was ominous. Marcus Thorne stood once again at the petitioner's platform, but this time, Vorchin descended from the High Arbiter's dais to stand beside him. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Vorchin began, I have returned from Earth's solar system. Everything Ambassador Thorne claimed is verifiable and documented. The human civilization we see before us is indeed descended from an advanced species that existed 12,000 years ago. They did wage war against the Vekra Empire. They did achieve complete victory. And then they did something unprecedented, they chose to forget. He activated the central display, showing images from the archives. The assembled ambassadors watched in silence as the evidence unfolded before them. The humans preserved their history not as triumphant legend but as warning, Vorchin continued. They documented every atrocity they committed in pursuit of justice. Every civilian casualty, every world damaged in their campaign, every compromise of their own values. They recorded it all, and then they sealed it away, hoping their descendants would rebuild civilization without the burden of such knowledge. Thexval's energy field pulsed weakly. Why? Why would any species deliberately surrender such power? Marcus spoke for the first time. Because power without wisdom is tyranny. Because we looked at what we'd become, efficient, ruthless, unstoppable, and we were horrified. We'd set out to punish genocide and ended up creating refugees across a dozen systems. The Vecra were monsters, but in destroying them, we bred our own monsters. We couldn't undo what we'd done, but we could choose what we'd become next. Xyla's voice was subdued. So you started over. Rebuilt from primitiveness. Relearned everything slowly, hoping to regain your humanity in the process. Yes, Marcus confirmed. It took 8,000 years. 8,000 years of art, philosophy, literature, culture. We fought among ourselves, made terrible mistakes, created and destroyed countless times. But we also learned compassion, developed ethics, built societies based on cooperation rather than dominance. And when we finally reached the stars again, we hoped we'd be ready to meet the galaxy as partners, not conquerors. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled ambassadors. Instead, we found the same arrogance that doomed the Vecra. Different species, different empires, but the same assumption that might makes right. That advanced technology grants permission to ignore the sovereignty of others. Rainetha's crystalline form chimed softly. What do you want from us, Ambassador Thorn? The same thing we've always wanted, Marcus replied. Recognition. Respect. The acknowledgement that our borders are our own, that our worlds are ours to govern, that our development proceeds at our pace. We're not asking for council membership anymore. We're informing you that we exist, we have the power to defend ourselves, and we choose to use that power only in defense. Vorchin turned to face the assembly. I propose a new classification in the Concordat. Not member species, not primitive species, but sovereign species. Civilizations that have demonstrated both capability and the wisdom to use it judiciously. Humanity will be the first, but I suspect not the last. And if we refuse? Asked Krothzul, though his tone suggested the question was rhetorical. Then you repeat history, Marcus said simply. The Vecra refused to acknowledge the rights of others. They believed their advancement gave them authority over all lesser species. They learned otherwise. The choice of whether you learn the same lesson the same way is yours. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous. 12 empires abstained and Thexval voted against. But 60 empires voted yes, and the Concordat was amended for the first time in 47,000 years. 3 months later, Marcus Thorn stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital station, watching ships from a dozen council species approach for the first formal diplomatic exchange. Sarah Reeves joined him, carrying 2 glasses of something the humans called whiskey. To the day aliens learned fear, she said, raising her glass. Marcus clinked his glass against hers but shook his head slightly. Not fear. Respect. Fear would have meant we failed. Respect means we might have succeeded. Below them, Earth turned in serene blue and green glory, a world that had fallen and risen and fallen again, now standing at the threshold of a new age. And in the darkness beyond, 47 ships maintained their silent vigil, crewed by men and women who remembered the cost of peace and stood ready to pay it again if necessary. But this time hopefully they wouldn't have to. Humanity had returned to the stars. And the galaxy would never be quite the same.